So I'm seeing the pigeonhole questions already coming up. Just to get us started, what is the relationship between the waste management conversation and the circular economy conversation in your countries? Ian.
So it's obviously we're Zero Waste Scotland is coming out of the kind of waste conversation, I guess, in terms of increasing recycling. So we are taking that conversation out. But I do think there is, in some places, two conversations going on. There's a waste thing about increasing recycling and doing all the things that you would naturally assume a nation was trying to do around increasing recycling rates. And there are, to be fair, business people, business innovators, new companies, startups, as well as some of the more traditional ones, thinking differently about not their waste, not what happens at the back door, but actually their products and services. And it is a challenge, I think, to the waste industry to kind of understand that there is another conversation going on that we're not really part of. A lot has been said to try and bring everybody together to try and talk about it, but I know that from our experience, some of the companies we work with do not see this as a waste issue. They do not see this as a recycling issue. This is not something, part of the kind of zero waste journey as such. They see this as a business opportunity. They see they're looking about, not just in Scotland, but across Europe and across the world, and seeing this as a kind of business shift, and they want to see how they can turn their business into that.
Yeah, Kari, do you want to speak to that? I'm seeing a question that's related. Have waste reduction campaigns had a positive or negative effect on the circular economy? So how are those conversations connected or not? And is it positive or negative? Kari?
I would say that in Finland, waste sector is a bit disconnected from circular economy discussions, and that's because I think I come from the innovation point of view, and usually those traditional sectors, they maybe don't see the big picture, and the innovation usually comes out of the box.
Yeah.
And if you think about even the car industry, could Tesla have been the product of German car industry? I don't think so. So it's kind of that there has to be some big thinker, innovators who come out of this kind of discussions and see the real value where you can actually tap into.
Yeah, great. Kari, Kleska, did you want to speak to that?
Sorry, about what?
Just about the waste conversation and its connection to the circular economy conversation, and also waste reduction strategies or campaigns. Do they have a positive or negative effect in moving the circular economy forward?
Well, actually, I do think that waste reduction or the waste discussion is really a part of circular economy. Mm-hmm. And I do think that a circular economy and waste reduction or smarter ways just to work with waste, both really need to be done, and they are integrated anyway. So I do think we need each other.
Great. So I'm going to ask one more question from Pigeonhole, and then I'm going to go to Toronto. So the question that is coming up is, how is Canada perceived by European countries in terms of our leadership around circular economy and zero waste? Why don't we start with you, Kleska? What do you think? How is Canada?
Hard time understanding.
How is Canada perceived in terms of the circular economy and our work towards zero waste?
Well, I think I've told my colleagues already that I'm really impressed, and this is really the first time that I speak to an audience that I don't have to explain what circular economy means. And that's really new to me. Normally, I really start with circular economy means, and then I can start my story. So I'm pretty impressed by what is already being done and the knowledge that's already here.
Great. Kari?
Actually, I came from Seoul, where I was speaking at a circular economy conference, and there I had to explain what is circular economy. And yeah, definitely you are on the spot here and really talking about right things. What I haven't really maybe found yet was the discussion about really high added value products and how you can actually come to that play. Discussion maybe has been quite a lot about waste and how do you actually utilize it, but there's so much into, for example, in the forest industry, you can actually utilize so that you make biochemicals, for example, biofuels, whatever, higher value-added products. And I would like to hear more about that, for example.
Thanks, Kari. Ian?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I guess from the Scottish point of view, a lot of the conversations have been around Europe around the circular economy, so we've been really focused on that in terms of engaging. But coming coming to be invited here sort of made me look around what was happening, obviously speak to people, and I've been very impressed by the fact that we didn't have to stand up here and describe what the circular economy is, that a lot of people that I've met already in Vancouver understand clearly what this is about and the opportunities that it brings, and I think that's the other key thing. I think it's not just something people say, well, we understand it, that people are starting to work out in their head what that actually means in terms of opportunities, jobs, economic prosperity, both here in Vancouver and the rest of Canada, so that's spot on.
Great, thank you. So let's go over to Robin in Toronto and hear a question from there.
Hi. So our question is, what obstacles have you encountered in establishing a circular economy in your country, and how have you moved past these?
Robin, could you repeat the question again?
The question is, what obstacles have you encountered in establishing a circular economy in your country, and how have you moved past these?
Great. So what obstacles have you encountered in establishing the circular economy, and how did you overcome them from Toronto? Thank you, Robin. So who would like to start? Ian, go ahead.
I have to say, I don't think there are, we don't really perceive any barriers at the moment. We just see opportunities because we're kind of at the start of this. And I think it really is, it's an opportunity for everybody kind of just to throw ideas on the table. So the Scottish Government led on a kind of consultation recently around the circular economy to try and, we've already engaged with key sectors, as you've seen from my presentation, to understand what the opportunities were, and we're trying to get some feedback to people understand any barriers. But the sense we've got is more about, the only barrier is time. People really want to kind of explore what this really means for us in Scotland. So I'd say we don't have a list of barriers at the moment. I mean, we have more of a list of, come on, there's opportunities here. How do we make them happen? So it's all about the support that organisations like myself can provide, working in partnership with enterprise agencies and others on the ground to support businesses, because businesses, I wouldn't say there's a queue at the door, but there are a number of businesses who are approaching us for support in sort of turning their business model around and looking differently about what they're doing, and I think that's really encouraging.
Great. Either of you? Yeah, Karin.
Yeah, I would say that in Finland, the challenge and the opportunity at the same time is really demonstrate the benefits and invest in those cases that you can really show the results. I think in Europe, in many instances, we are talking about the opportunity, and of course you have to paint that out. What is the big picture? But then really try to showcase what you can really do, and I think that's where we have to focus now in Finland.
Great.
Well, I don't think we're there yet at all. It's not that Europe or the Netherlands is a circular hotspot already, or that our economy is circular already, so we still have to do a lot, even in Europe. And I've been working in this sector for a couple of years already, and I really see it improving, and I see a lot of people that really start working in it, and I honestly believe that if we look back in 20 years from now, if you really understand the concept, we probably look back and think, really, did we think in such a way 20 years ago? Happy that we live these days and that we have a circular economy, which is much more, bringing much more value to our society, also in a social way.
Now, I know that in each of your cases, the government's playing a big role, and one of the top questions here is about the policies. So, Kari, I'll start with you. What policies have been enacted in your country? And then I'll go to the example from Netherlands and Scotland. What are the policies that are enabling this transition to the circular economy?
I would say that first is the kind of mental level that you are really committed. Of course, you have to understand what is the problem first, and I think in Finland we have understood partly. Finnish government is investing and doing the policies maybe in the biological cycles, but the technical part of it, the technical cycles and the business related to that is something that we have to push more, so that you really understand the business model cases, because it's hard to write policies about business models, and that's still the immaterial side and the service side. The business models are very important, and for the policymakers, it's hard to understand and how to kind of model that in a policy framework. Of course, you can do taxation type of things, but at the end of the day, it's about really investments in the sector and believing and communicating that to the private sector, that we are with you and we will support you with your activities.
Klaska, do you find it's the same? It's investments and communicating that to business?
I totally agree that it's not only about rules and regulations, it's absolutely about investment, and also, and that's what we see in the Dutch government, brought together a few frontrunners of organizations that are really interested in or really dealing with circular economy, and we are also part of that. And what they do is giving us a lot of money just to actually research, like, what can we do? And what are best solutions for companies, but also for cities or governments? And they actually give us a lot of free space in order to explore and innovate. And that really helps, and it really helps our organization also in order just to move forward.
So to create the policy context, but then allow innovation within that, yeah. And what about in Scotland, the policies to support this?
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, there isn't probably anything specific that at this moment in time, although, it is wrapped up in our kind of journey to zero waste, this desire now in terms of government thinking that a shift to a circular economy is very important. But I guess just having the kind of regulations and the policy around the zero waste, particularly around businesses, putting an obligation on businesses to recycle, meant that it did actually, to some extent shift from the back door to the boardroom. People actually thought, well, what does it actually mean? What do I have to do? And by doing that, I think in some of the sort of forward-thinking companies, they did start to have a conversation around their waste at the back door and engage with the consumers and all sorts of, and the business-to-business relationship. So that did start to, create an environment that people started to think differently about the whole life cycle. I know that's not the word we were asked to use this morning, but around their materials and their products. So that started. Another thing that we believe will help is the Scottish Government passed a sustainable procurement bill or a procurement reform bill, which was looking at how we can build in some more sustainable products and services to public procurement. Now, that's just coming through and they're kind of making its way through the kind of procurement parts of not just central government, local government. We do believe that is a real hook to create that market pool for new ways of doing business in terms of services and performance rather than products. And I think that's a real opportunity. So we are, I think the Scottish Government would say they're very much looking at this space. What more can they do to encourage this shift to a circular economy? Because the numbers are really, really beginning to stack up in terms of opportunity.
Great. So I think we're going to see if there's something from Toronto. So Robin, I'll take one more question here and come to you. There's a really interesting question that's happening here, which is around the role of the circular economy in bringing in remote communities or rural parts of your country. So if any of you had an experience where you're really making the tie to remote or rural parts of your country.
Yeah.
You've done that, yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, we're starting up that program also. And because we really see circular economy is not tied to just one spot. It's really, if you're talking about circular economy, it's involving a whole system. So even when you're talking about food supply in a city, you actually have to deal with rural or urban areas where they provide or make the food. So actually, we have many companies, for example, in the Netherlands, very known for dairy. We have a very big dairy company that is working in urban parts only. And we really started like, so what can you do in your urban area just to improve the circular economy? And I can tell about what that is, but then I will give another speech.
But maybe make a connection. So how do they make that link in terms of the remote community? Do they make a direct connection, or what is the thing that makes it make that connection to the remote community?
Well, actually, that is already so there is already a link between the urban and the non-urban area in that perspective. And you mean how?
Is there something that the circular economy brings to that connection? Does it change it in any way?
To connect the urban and the unurban?
Yeah, does it change it in a significant way when you're? Or is it more that it just shows it as a system?
I think it's part of the same system. I think that's my point, indeed. Yeah.
Great. So Robin, I'll go over to you in Toronto and see what we have as a question from Toronto.
Great, thanks. So European countries have advanced. Sorry about that. I'll start again. European countries have advanced green policies and environmental stewardship is socially embedded. What's your advice to Canada on how we can get there too?
So this is European countries have advanced green policies and environmental stewardship, and it's socially embedded. So what is your advice to Canada so that we can get there too, in terms of green policy and environmental stewardship as being socially embedded? Any advice from your countries?
So, yeah, because I guess we would look at that and think, well, we've still got a long way to go. It's not as embedded as we would probably like it to be embedded in terms of environmental stewardship. I still think like any certainly talking from Scotland's point of view, and I'm sure the rest of Europe, we're on that journey. I think it's beginning to happen. We have certain legislation that's certainly driven out of Europe that brings us on that journey, and we all do our bit. But in some respects, we look at, I guess Scotland looks at Canada. You know, I was talking yesterday about the producer responsibility framework that you have, particularly here in BC. You know, that's something that we don't have to that extent in Scotland. So I wouldn't be too hard on yourselves. I think you've got things here. Certainly, I've seen things in the couple of days I've been here that certainly are slightly more advanced than we're doing in Scotland. So it's a bit of how we can work together and share good ideas.
Yeah, great. Great. So one of the questions, and actually this might go back to you, Klaska, because of the city dashboard, metrics. How do we measure the circular economy?
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's actually one of the greatest challenges we face. It's really almost a semantic discussion already. It's really, you have to nail down what circular economy means in the eyes of many people. And then you really have to say like, okay, and how do we measure such a little part of circular economy? Because that's what you do if you create a dashboard. You create different clocks that all measure different things. And some of those things are kind of easy to measure. For example, air pollution already, or water quality, or those kind of things. But there are also things that are much more difficult to measure. For example, how many more jobs do you create with circular economy, which is another clock on the dashboard. So in order to come up with such an answer, we really work together with a few research institutions in the Netherlands and also some other organizations. Like, what is the effect of circular economy, for example, on jobs or on happiness? And how do you measure value preservation? And how do you measure waste? So actually, we're still in that process. And some of those things are easier to measure than others.
Great. Kari.
But they're very necessary, especially if you want to make it tangible for people and also show the improvement.
That's right. So you've got ones we're already measuring, but also developing these metrics for things that are going to show the full scope of what's possible. Yeah.
Indeed. And we start very small and very simple, and we involve it and accelerate it in the upcoming years.
And thank you. And Kari, what's your experience in terms of metrics, especially with the work you did with McKinsey?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. We actually started the kind of circular economy barometer kind of work, and started from thinking what's the effect for jobs and growth. And it's actually quite difficult and artificial in many ways to try to pull that out from the system, because circular economy is kind of, it's a trend, theme, big idea, and it's very hard to kind of nail down to certain figures. And that's why we don't want to do that. On the other hand, it's also difficult if you just measure tons of something, because there's the value-added services and different kind of another game. And so basically, we don't want to go that path either. So basically, we are in the point that we have to rethink the metric side. We don't have the right answer, unfortunately, yet.
Great. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask you about how we get our national government involved, but a quick response on infrastructure for upcycling. Was there any investments made on infrastructure for upcycling from the public or private sector?
So, well, we're obviously, I mean, in terms of working with the reuse organisations in Scotland, so looking at them There's a huge degree of upcycling that they're involved in terms of furniture and white goods, etc. So that's one place we're looking at, and I guess part of that is trying to understand what the skills that are needed. And there's a huge part of the shift to the circular economy is understanding what skills are needed across the whole of Scotland, really, to make that happen. So that's one of the places we've been looking at, and I guess some of it is around repair skills and upcycling, looking at the product, be able to visualize. I think that came up again in the food waste discussion. Somebody be able to visualize what that could become, both at that product level, but also at material level. And
you started an institute for remanufacturing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, going back to my conversation about new relationships. We've funded Strathclyde University to form an institute of remanufacturing, which I believe is the 4th in the world, and that's specifically about the academic part of Strathclyde working with industry, working with the manufacturing businesses in Scotland. So that's bringing those two people together to work together. So it's about empowering academics and businesses to work together, and then for us to identify what skills and what support those types of relationships need. So that's very exciting. It's just been launched at the beginning of this year, and we've got a lot of hope for it, because about 60 companies have come to the table interested in working on remanufacturing.
Great. And so, Ian, advice for us in Canada in engaging our national government and igniting the circular economy like you've seen in Scotland, and I'll ask the same of Kari and Klaska.
So difficult to answer that political question. I mean, all I can say is from a Scottish point of view, zero waste is the direction of travel. We all understand that. But if you want to really get the benefits from it, you've got to think about a circular economy. We can move stuff out of one container and put it into another container and ship it off with every respect to somebody else's economy. But if you want the jobs, if you want the social investment, the social benefits, the happiness, you name it, the greater contentment in your country, you've got to start thinking about this. And we've done a lot of work on the numbers in terms of the economic opportunities around the circular economy, and I really think that's what's given it traction. It's certainly brought in the enterprise and the economic parts of government, so it's not just an environmental minister who's championing the idea of a circular economy. It's right across government that this is in it. It's in our economic strategy, the refresh of our economic strategy last year. Circular economy is mentioned, as part of that mix. So this is what it's about. It's getting those numbers out in terms of it's not just about getting stuff out of a hole in the ground.
Karen.
Well, at the end of the day, it's jobs and growth, and that's what they should be after. And that's what we have showcased and tried to showcase for our government, that it's worth of the investment. And I think it's that simple, but of course, like in European Union, you have to talk with different players, and it's not only about the jobs and growth, of course, but that's the kind of main message from my side.
Great. Klaska.
Well, I explained a bit already about our national governmental program where we're part of. They really give us investments just to explore and to come up with the greatest solutions and the best practices and standardize that. So that's what our government does, and I think it really works well. And it's really and we are coming up with solutions for businesses or working together with businesses. So that's how we interlink that. And on a municipality level, you can also do a lot. So, for example, we just did a project with Amsterdam, and what Amsterdam did is they really put kind of what they call experimental free zones, where businesses can go to and really experiment with all kinds of solutions without rules and regulations. And if it works, they are also able to invest in those solutions. So that really works well. Mm-hmm. And then I would like to close with a remark that it is already very valid for businesses themselves to implement circular economy solutions. So there's not a reason for a company just to wait till the government does something. Because, for example, high-value reuse, it's in the end very profitable for the company itself.
Great. Well, thank you to all three of you bringing your insights and expertise. It looks like we're going to be asking to have Japan join us perhaps next year, since they've been doing this since the 1990s. But when we're all in this movement together and creating a circular economy, we really benefit, as Ian, as you mentioned, from this type of exchange, so we can all take steps towards this transformation together. So please join me in thanking the panelists, Ian, Kari, and Klaska, for coming to share their insights with us.
Thank you.